Commander Hyun-sik felt the deck vibrate beneath his boots as the massive Draconian flagship, Crimson Talon, cut through the void of space. The viewport stretched before him showed a small blue and green marble that would soon be another conquest for the mighty Draconian Empire. Hearth, such a simple name for what would be their greatest victory yet. "Admiral, we're approaching the target system," reported Lieutenant Kang Dae from the navigation console. His reptilian features remained calm despite the excitement rippling. Through the bridge crew, Admiral Tae-ho emerged from the tactical room, his scarred face bearing the marks of 100 battles across the galaxy. His dark, crimson uniform gleamed with medals of conquest. Behind him, the holographic display showed the full might of their armada, 500 warships arranged in perfect formation like a pack of metal predators. "A primitive world, barely past nuclear weapons," Tae-ho muttered, studying Earth's defensive capabilities on the display. 500 ships to conquer one backwater planet seems excessive. The crew around them murmured agreement. They had conquered star systems with just a dozen ships. This was like bringing a plasma cannon to a knife fight. Captain Jimin hunched over her sensor station, her scaled fingers dancing across the controls. Suddenly her yellow eyes narrowed. "Sir, I'm detecting unusual energy readings from the planet's surface. The electromagnetic patterns don't match any known technology." "Describe them," Hyun-sik commanded, moving to peer over her shoulder at the strange readings. "It's like the planet itself is humming, sir. The energy signature is uniform across the entire surface. I've scanned over 10,000 worlds, and I've never seen anything like this." The bridge fell silent except for the soft hum of ship systems. Several junior officers exchanged nervous glances. Even the hardened veterans looked puzzled. "Probably some crude defensive system," Hyun-sik dismissed with a wave of his clawed hand. "These humans barely understand their own technology. Begin the descent. Signal all ships to prepare for planetary bombardment." The communications officer nodded and began transmitting orders. Throughout the armada, ships powered up their weapons. Plasma cannons extended from hull compartments. Shield generators hummed to life. The sight was magnificent. 500 vessels of war preparing to unleash destruction. As they moved into Earth's outer atmosphere, proximity alarms sounded softly. On the screen, a tiny object appeared, drifting toward them like a lost piece of debris. "What is that?" Tae-ho demanded. "Scanning now," Jimin replied. "It's incredibly old, Admiral. Primitive construction. Appears to be some kind of communication satellite." The ancient satellite looked pathetic next to their gleaming warships. Its solar panels were cracked and yellowed with age. Its metal hull showed centuries of meteor impacts and cosmic radiation damage. Suddenly, static crackled through the bridge speakers. The primitive radio transmission was weak and full of interference, but the words were clear enough. "Draconian forces, this is Earth Command. Turn back now while you still can." The bridge erupted in laughter. Several officers slapped their knees. In amusement, even the usually serious navigation crew chuckled. Tae-ho laughed hardest of all, his deep voice echoing through the chamber. "Pathetic. They send an antique radio to threaten the mightiest armada in the galaxy. Ignore them. Begin." "And the assault?" "Sir," the communications officer asked, "should we respond to their transmission?" "Why waste words on primitives?" Hyun-sik sneered. "They'll understand our response soon enough." On the tactical display, 500 red dots began their final approach to Earth. Each ship carried enough firepower to level mountains. Their combined strength could shatter continents. The satellite continued its feeble transmission. "Please, you don't understand what you're doing. The planet will defend itself. No advanced technology can survive here." More laughter from the crew. How could these humans, who still used chemical rockets and radio waves, threaten ships that could travel between stars? "Look at this intelligence report," said Commander Ho Jin from the tactical station. "They still fight with metal projectiles and chemical explosives. Their fastest ships can't even leave their own solar system. And they warn us about their planet defending itself," added Captain Yoon Seo with a grin. "What will they do, throw rocks at us?" Tae-ho raised his hand for silence. The laughter died instantly. Every officer stood straighter, waiting for orders. "Deploy the first wave," he commanded, his voice cold as space itself. "Begin with their military installations. Show these humans what happens when they dare to threaten the Draconian Empire." Through the viewport, Earth grew larger. Cities twinkled like stars across the dark continents. Clouds swirled in peaceful patterns. It looked so harmless, so defenseless. The first squadron of fighters roared away from the flagship, their engines blazing blue fire. Behind them, the massive bulk of the Armada followed like a dark tide rolling toward a peaceful shore. None of them noticed that Earth's energy signature had just changed. The first wave of Draconian fighters screamed through Earth's atmosphere like metal meteors, their engines painting fiery streaks across the morning sky. Squadron leader Han Wu gripped his controls tightly, watching the massive city of New York sprawl beneath him like a glittering carpet. "Weapons hot," he called into his comm. "Beginning attack run." His plasma cannons hummed to life, charging with deadly energy. The targeting system locked onto a tall building below. His finger moved to the trigger. Then everything went wrong. First, his targeting display flickered. The weapon charge indicator dropped to 0. Then his engine sputtered like a dying animal. "Control Falcon 1, Han Wu's voice cracked with panic. "My weapons are offline, engine failing." Around him, 20 other fighters suddenly broke formation. Some spiraled out of control. Others simply fell from the sky like broken toys. "Falcon 2 is down," screamed pilot Kim Min. "Everything's dead. I'm going in." Her fighter plummeted toward the Hudson River, splashing down in a great geyser of water and steam. On the flagship miles above, Engineer Moon Ji stared at her instruments in disbelief. Warning lights flashed across every system. Power readings dropped without reason. Computers glitched with impossible errors. "Admiral," she shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos, "it's not mechanical failure. Something is actively draining our power systems." Admiral Tae-ho stormed to her station, his claws clicking on the deck. "Explain." "Sir, it's like something is pulling energy from our ships. The more power we try to use, the faster it drains away. It's affecting everything. Weapons, engines, life support." Below them, something extraordinary was happening. The humans weren't running in panic like conquered peoples usually did. Instead, they moved with calm purpose, like they had practiced this exact scenario. In New York, people walked to subway stations in orderly lines. No screaming, no pushing. They carried simple bags and helped elderly neighbors down the stairs. "Look at them," muttered Captain Hyun-sik from the bridge. "They're not even scared." The ancient satellite's voice crackled again through their failing communications. "We warned you. Your technology is incompatible with our world." Lieutenant Jin Woo, at the communication station, tried to boost the signal. Sparks flew from his console as it overloaded. "Sir, communications are failing. I can't maintain contact with the outer ships." Through the viewport, they watched more fighters crash into the ocean. Some managed to eject, their pilots floating. "Down on failing parachutes, this is impossible," Tae-ho roared. "We have shields, backup systems, triple redundancy." Moonji shook her head, her face pale. "None of it matters. Whatever's happening, it's bypassing every safeguard we have." On the ground, human rescue boats raced toward the downed Draconian pilots, but not to attack, to save them. The aliens watched in confusion as humans pulled their enemies from the water. "Why aren't they shooting us?" asked rescued pilot Baejun, coughing up seawater as a human medic wrapped him in a blanket. The human medic smiled sadly. "Because you're not our enemy. You're victims of something you don't understand." Back on the flagship, Tae-ho slammed his fist on the command console. "Deploy ground forces. If our ships won't work, we'll take this planet on foot." Dropships across the Armada opened their bays. Massive robotic war machines stomped onto the loading ramps. Draconian soldiers charged their weapons and activated their personal shields. The dropships began their descent. But as they entered the atmosphere, the same power drain hit them. Thruster flames sputtered and died. Gravity generators failed. The first dropship fell like a stone, its mechanical cargo tumbling out in a shower of metal. "Dropship Alpha is down hard," reported Captain Songyi from the ground forces. "Beta and Gamma ships experiencing complete system failure." One by one, the mighty war machines crashed into fields and forests around Earth's cities. the smart metal of their hulls crumpled. Their advanced computer brains went dark. A dropship full of assault mechs crashed into a wheat field outside St. Louis. The mechs, each worth more than a Star Destroyer, lay scattered like broken toys. Their pilots climbed out unharmed but bewildered. "Our mechs won't move," reported Commander Parko. "Every system is dead. It's like they're just empty shells now." On the flagship, chaos reigned. Half the crew worked frantically to restore power. The other half prepared escape pods as systems failed one by one. "Life support is down to 20%, reported Engineer Moonji. "We're using backup power for everything." Admiral Teho stared at Earth through the dimming viewport. The planet looked so peaceful, so harmless. Yet it had defeated their mighty armada without firing a single shot. "Sir," Communications Officer Jin Woo whispered, "the humans are hailing us again." The voice came through clearly now, carried by some technology that still worked. "Draconian. Fleet, this is Earth Command. Stand down your forces. We are prepared to offer aid to your stranded personnel. No further harm will come to you if you cooperate." Teho wanted to refuse to order one last assault, but around him, his flagship groaned and shuddered as systems failed. In the distance, 500 warships hung dead in space like sleeping giants. For the first time in his long military career, Admiral Teho faced a terrible truth. They were completely helpless. Dr. Sung-hee wiped sweat from her scaled forehead as sparks flew from the overhead panels in her laboratory. The ship's power had been flickering for hours, making her delicate research equipment useless. Every time she tried to analyze what was happening to them, the machines would shut down or give impossible readings. She clutched her portable scanner and headed toward the one place that still had some power, the emergency medical bay. Admiral Teho was already there, his proud uniform now wrinkled and stained with coolant from a burst pipe. "Report," he demanded, though his voice lacked its usual commanding force. "I've isolated the cause," she said, connecting her scanner to the medical computer. The screen flickered but stayed on long enough to show her findings. Earth exists within a quantum field that disrupts complex technology. The more advanced the system, the more unstable it becomes. The Admiral stared at the strange readings. "Explain it in terms I can understand." "Think of it like this," Sung-hee said, using her scaled finger to trace patterns in the condensation on a metal surface. "Our technology works by controlling energy in very precise ways, but this field around Earth scrambles those controls. The smarter our machines try to be, the more confused they become." Through the warped hull, they could hear human voices. Earth soldiers were helping Draconian crews evacuate from the dying warships. They came in small boats and aircraft that looked ridiculously simple, but somehow still worked. On Earth's surface, Captain Hyun-sik sat on a rock beside his crashed ship, the majestic Stormclaw. The vessel that had once soared between stars now resembled a beached whale. Its sleek hull was cracked, and green coolant dripped from twisted metal. Around him, human officials moved calmly among the stranded Draconians. They wore simple uniforms, without any energy shields or power armor, yet they seemed completely confident. Lee Soo-jin, Earth's representative, approached Hyun-sik. She was a small woman with graying hair, wearing nothing more threatening than a blue jacket with Earth Command badges. "Captain," she said gently, "are any of your crew injured?" Hyun-sik looked at her suspiciously. "Why do you help us? We came to conquer your world." Soo-jin sat down beside him, ignoring the jagged metal and leaked fluids. "Because you're not the first." "What do you mean?" "We've known about this field for decades," she explained, pulling out a simple tablet that somehow worked perfectly. Simpler technology works because it's below the disruption threshold." The tablet showed videos of previous encounters. Ships from different alien species, all advanced, all crashing just like the Draconians. Some from 50 years ago, others from just last decade. "The Vorthan Empire tried to invade in 2051, Soo-jin said, scrolling through images. 200 ships, all crashed within hours. The Synthetic Collective sent robot armies in 2067. Their AI brains went silent the moment they entered our atmosphere." Hyun-sik watched in growing horror as the videos showed the same pattern repeating. Advanced aliens arriving with mighty war machines, only to be defeated by the planet itself. "You're saying our own advancement is a weakness here?" he asked. Sujin nodded grimly. Your ships are too complex to function. You're trapped. Back on the flagship, Dr. Sung-hee had gathered more data. She found Admiral Tae-ho in what used to be the command center, now barely lit by flickering emergency lights. I understand it now, she said excitedly, though her excitement was tinged with fear. The field doesn't just disrupt technology. It feeds on complexity. The quantum patterns around Earth create a feedback loop. The more sophisticated a system, the more energy the field pulls from it. Can we adapt? Modify our ships? Tae-ho asked desperately. Sung-hee shook her head. It would be like trying to build a spaceship out of rocks and wood. We'd have to abandon everything that makes our technology advanced. On Earth's surface, more Draconians were learning this truth firsthand. Commander Moonjai tried to activate his personal shield generator. Nothing happened. He pressed harder on the controls. Still nothing. A human child, maybe 10 years old, walked up to him. You need to use the manual release, she said helpfully. The smart parts don't work here. She showed him a simple mechanical switch hidden behind a panel. When pressed, the shield flickered weakly to life for a few seconds before dying again. Even this, Moonjai muttered, even the simplest systems fail. The child nodded seriously. That's why we use gears and springs for important stuff. Computers are just for fun. As night fell, Earth's cities glowed with warm electric lights, simple tungsten bulbs and basic LED arrays. In the sky above, the Draconian fleet was a collection of dark shapes against the stars. Some ships had already begun to break apart, as their structural support systems failed. Near Seoul, pilot Han Yul sat with a group of humans around a bonfire. Real fire burning actual wood. It seemed primitive, yet it was the warmest he'd been since arriving. Your radios still work, he observed, listening to Earth Command coordinating rescue efforts. An elderly human mechanic nodded. Simple AM and FM radio, no digital processing, no smart algorithms, just basic transmission. We had radios like that, Han Yul said sadly, thousands of years ago, before we became so advanced. Above them, another Draconian ship's fusion reactor failed. But there was no explosion. The field had drained even the energy needed for that. The ship simply went dark, joining its silent sisters in orbit. Dr. Sung-hee made one final discovery that night. The field wasn't random. It was exactly calibrated, as if something had designed it specifically to disable advanced technology, while leaving simple systems alone. She shared this finding with Admiral Tae-ho, who had moved to Earth's surface after the flagship's life support finally died. Designed? He asked. By whom? Sung-hee looked up at the stars, now clearly visible without the ship's lights interfering. That, Admiral, is what we need to find out. Days passed like a slow nightmare. In the cold darkness of space, half the Draconian fleet floated like dead, metal husks. The mighty warships that had once terrorized entire star systems now drifted silently, their proud hulls twisted and darkened. Admiral Tae-ho sat in what remained of the Crimson Talon's command center. The air was getting thin. Most of the ship's systems had shut down to preserve power, but even that was running out. Around him, his senior officers huddled in the dim emergency lighting, their breath visible in the growing cold. "Sir," whispered Communications Officer Jin Woo, his voice weak from days of rationed air. "The nursery ship Golden Shell reports they have only 6 hours of life support remaining. They have 800 children aboard." Tae-ho closed his eyes. In all his years of conquest, he had never felt so powerless. The great Draconian Empire, masters of 100 worlds, reduced to begging scraps of air. He picked up the failing communicator, its display flickering weakly. "Earth Command," he began, then stopped. The words stuck in his throat like poison. Captain Hyun-sik, floating nearby in zero gravity, touched his admiral's shoulder. "Sir, it's not surrender. It's saving lives." Tae-ho nodded slowly and pressed the transmit button. "Please," he said, his proud voice breaking. "We have children aboard these ships. Non-combatants, they're dying." The response came immediately, carried through the simple radio waves that somehow still worked. "Admiral, this is Earth Command. We're dispatching rescue vessels now. Stand." Through the cracked viewport, points of light began moving toward them. Not the sleek, fast craft they expected, but chunky, ugly ships that looked like flying bricks. They moved slowly but steadily, unaffected by the field that had crippled the Draconian fleet. The first rescue ship, New Hope, docked with the nursery ship. HFY watched through a telescope as human rescue workers in simple pressure suits moved through the failing Draconian vessel. They carried Draconian children, small-scaled beings with large eyes, in basic emergency pods that had no fancy technology, just thick walls and simple air recyclers. Within hours, a steady stream of rescue ships moved between the dying fleet and Earth's surface. Each trip brought more survivors to safety. Dr. Sung-hee found herself aboard one of these human rescue vessels, the Second Chance. She studied the simple but effective systems with fascination. Everything was mechanical, with basic electronics. That would have been considered primitive even in ancient times. "How do you coordinate so many ships without computers?" she asked engineer Kim Jun, who was piloting their vessel with manual controls and analog dials. "Radios and mathematics," he replied with a smile. "Just like your ancestors probably did, thousands of years ago. On Earth's surface, the rescued Draconians were taken to camps that looked more like small cities. The humans had clearly prepared for this. Building after building had been constructed with simple materials, wood, concrete, basic metal, but they were warm and comfortable. Earth leader Park Min-ho met with the arriving evacuees at Camp Freedom, outside what was once New York. He was an older man with kind eyes and work-worn hands. He spoke directly to Admiral HFY as the proud warrior was helped from a rescue pod. "Admiral," Min-ho said gently, "I know this is hard to accept, but you did the right thing." HFY looked around at his people, soldiers, scientists, engineers, children, all of them now refugees on a primitive world. "Why do you help us? We came to destroy you." Min-ho's expression grew thoughtful. "We understand because we went through this ourselves. Thousands of years ago, our ancestors came from the stars. They were trapped just like you are now." The Draconian survivors fell silent. Dr. Sung-hee, her scientific mind reeling, stepped forward. "You're saying humans aren't native to Earth?" "No," Min-ho confirmed, leading them toward the camp's main building. "We learned to adapt, to live simply. It's the only way to survive here." Inside the building, ancient murals covered the walls. They showed a story in simple images: great ships falling from the sky, confused aliens learning to farm, cities built with simple tools, and eventually, those aliens becoming fully human in appearance. "We called ourselves the Talari once," Min-ho explained. "We had ships that could cross the galaxy in hours. We had weapons that could crack planets. We had technology you can't imagine." He pointed to one mural showing tall, elegant beings with elongated heads. "This is what we looked like when we first arrived. The field didn't just disable our technology. Over generations, it changed us, made us more compatible with this world." Dr. Sung-hee studied the murals in amazement. "The field, it's not just disrupting technology, it's rewriting biology." Slowly, Min-ho nodded. "Your children, born here, will be different from you. Their children more different still. Given enough time, they'll become human-like, adapted to Earth's unique environment." Commander Moonjae, holding his young daughter, stared at the murals. "So we're not the first, and we won't be the last." "Every few decades, someone new arrives," Min-ho said sadly. "The Kelthans, the Zephyrites, the Synthetic Collective, all of them tried to conquer Earth. All of them ended up here, learning to use hammers and saws instead of plasma weapons." As night fell, the Draconians sat around simple fires eating, basic food cooked in metal pots. The children adapted quickly, playing games with human children using sticks and stones. Admiral HFY found Min-ho sitting alone, watching the stars. "How many of your people made it through the transition?" he asked. "About half," Min-ho replied honestly. "The older ones had the hardest time. They could never fully accept what Earth had done to them. But the children, they thrived." In the ruins of the Crimson Talon still floating in space, automated systems recorded a final message. The ship's AI, in its last moments of function, transmitted everything it had learned about Earth's field. The message raced across the galaxy, a warning that would reach Draconian space in 3 years. But on Earth's surface, those warnings felt very far away. The survivors had more immediate concerns: learning to grow food, build shelters, and live without the technology that had defined their civilization for millennia. As the rescued Draconians settled in for their first night on Earth, many wondered if this was truly the end of their old life, or simply the beginning of something completely new. Admiral Tae-ho stood in the middle of New Haven settlement, his once pristine navy blue uniform now patched with common cloth and stained with soil. His ceremonial medals had been traded long ago for farming tools. Around him, surviving Draconians learned to coax vegetables from the earth with their bare hands and simple hoes, their advanced weapons and armor now serving as flower pots and garden decorations. He watched former Captain Mi-jin carefully transplanting seedlings. Her powerful warrior hands, once capable of crushing steel, now gently protected delicate roots. A human child named Kevin sat beside her, showing her how to tell which plants needed more water. "This isn't conquest," Tae-ho said bitterly to his. "Cade Captain Jimin." "No," Jimin agreed, pulling weeds from a vegetable garden with surprising satisfaction. "But it's life." Human elder Kim Jae-woo approached them, walking with a simple wooden cane. At 93, he had been one of the youngest humans when they first arrived on Earth 60 years ago. "Your people fought bravely, Admiral," he said, "with respect. Now you can choose to fight for survival in a different way." Tae-ho looked around the settlement. Draconian engineers were building homes using only hand tools and mechanical methods they had dismissed as primitive just months before. Dr. Sung-hee had started teaching human mathematics, while human teachers showed young Draconians how to read weather patterns by watching clouds. "I used to command 500 ships," Tae-ho murmured. "Now I can barely grow a tomato." Jae-woo chuckled. "I once controlled matter at the quantum level. Took me 3 years to learn how to milk a cow without getting kicked. But look," he pointed to a group of children playing in the field. Draconian and human youngsters ran together, using sticks as wands and rocks as spaceships. Their laughter filled the air. "Your children won't remember the Empire," Jae-woo continued. "But they'll remember this. They'll remember learning to build with their hands and thinking with their heads instead of letting machines do everything." Months later, spring had come to Earth. The settlement had grown into a proper town. Former Draconian soldiers worked alongside humans in the fields. Commander Yoon Seo, once feared across 3 systems, now ran a small bakery. She made bread the old way, by hand, and surprisingly enjoyed it. "The dough has to be kneaded just right," she explained to young Draconian trainees. "You can't scan it or compute it. You have to feel it." Children of both species had started a school together. They learned mathematics using abacuses and calculators, not AI tutors. They studied the stars through simple telescopes instead of quantum sensors. Most importantly, they learned about both cultures: Draconian honor and human creativity, Draconian engineering and human adaptability. In the evening, as 3 moons rose over New Haven, Captain Hyun-sik sat on his front porch. He had built the house himself, using lumber and nails and sweat. It wasn't the grandest dwelling, but it was warm and solid. His daughter A-jin played in the yard with 2 human children and another Draconian boy. They were building a fort out of branches and old tarps. Yesterday, they would have used force fields and smart materials. Today, they used rope and imagination. Hyun-sik looked up at the stars and smiled. Somewhere out there, other armadas might learn of Earth's defenses. Maybe they would send even bigger fleets, thinking sheer numbers could overcome whatever had stopped the Draconians. But here, in this simple place, 2 species had found something more valuable than conquest. They had found peace. A message drone had reached Draconian space 3 weeks ago. It carried data about Earth's field and the fate of the Great Armada. The Draconian High Command was already preparing their response. A fleet of 10,000 ships, built with new technology designed to resist the field. Hyun-sik shook his head sadly. They still didn't understand. The field didn't care how many ships you brought or how advanced your technology was. Earth would simply wait, and eventually those proud warriors would join this peaceful community too. "Daddy," A-jin called, "come see our fort." He set down his simple book, a paper book with actual pages, and walked over to admire their construction. The fort was crooked and leaned dramatically to one side. It would probably fall down in the next strong wind. "It's perfect," he said, meaning it completely. As night deepened, the two species shared dinner together. Former Admiral Tai Ho had learned to cook something called spaghetti and meatballs, which the human children found hilarious when he tried to eat it with a fork in his scaled hands. During dinner, Dr. Sung-hee announced that she had finally figured out how to make soap using only plants and animal fat. The entire table cheered as if she had discovered faster-than-light travel. After the children went to bed, the adults sat around a fire. They told stories, humans sharing tales of old Earth, Draconians remembering legends from before the Empire. Jae-woo stood up slowly, looking at the mixed gathering around the fire. "My people have been on Earth for 60 years now. We've seen 5 different alien races try to conquer this world. Each time, we thought it would mean war. Each time, it meant new neighbors." He raised his simple wooden cup. "To the Draconians who came as conquerors and stayed as friends." The toast was echoed around the fire. In the distance, a nightbird called. Somewhere overhead, probably too high to see, the wreckage of 500 warships continued their slow orbits, a monument to the futility of trying to conquer what couldn't be conquered. The galaxy could keep its wars. Earth would keep its children, all of them, no matter where they came from or how they arrived. Because in the end, home wasn't about the technology you brought or the weapons you carried. Home was about the people you chose to build a life with. The end.